I opened a pet shop inside a horror game. A group of players were hell-bent on breaking in, wanting to kill me, the NPC, and my little animals just to earn some points, but they didn't know I was under a restriction. Once they step outside the pet shop, the little animals reveal their true forms. That scrawny orange cat is actually a Siberian tiger. The little golden retriever snoozing away is a three-headed hellhound. The tiny snake curled in the corner is actually a mutated giant forest python, and he has been hungry for a very long time. After dying from overwork performing surgery on animals late at night, I came to this horror game to apply for an NPC job because I was so dedicated. It didn't take long for me to be promoted to a minor boss, with my own instance. I named my instance Pet Paradise. I'm not the type who likes fighting and killing, so I set the difficulty very low. Players only need to rescue animals to clear the stage. Many players enjoyed passing through my instance. Out of boredom, I went back to my old trade as a veterinarian to promote my new shop. I wandered around various instances handing out flyers. I successfully became a familiar face among the monsters. The first customer at Future Pet Shop was Granny Chu from the Happy Community instance next door. Granny Chu walked into my shop leaning on a cane. I immediately stood up to greet her warmly. Welcome. Are you looking to buy something or see the doctor? Doctor, my Mimi hasn't been right lately. Not only has his appetite decreased, but he's also listless every day. I suspect he's sick. But since I'm a monster, I can't take him to a pet hospital in the real world. Looking at Granny Sue, her voice was full of guilt. I comforted her, telling her not to worry, and asked her to bring Mimi in for an exam. The granny didn't move. She looked my shop up and down, shook her head, and said, I think you'd better come outside and take a look. This left me a bit confused. With curiosity, I followed her out the door. As soon as I stepped out, I was licked right across the face by some animal. Saliva covered my face in an instant, and it felt a bit raspy. I wiped my face and opened my eyes. A massive Siberian tiger was standing before me. He looked chubby with clear, innocent eyes. I pointed at the tiger in disbelief. Granny, you call this Mimi? However, very quickly, my shock was replaced by excitement. In all my years of practicing medicine, I had never treated a Siberian tiger before. This novel experience was truly one of a kind, but a problem soon arose. The tiger's body was too large. Once he stepped inside, the whole shop became cramped. Not to mention using equipment for his exam. My X-ray machine could only capture one of his paws. I awkwardly scratched my head. Granny, do you have any way to make Mimi smaller? Granny Chu nodded. Using some unknown skill, the tiger's body began to shrink. He gradually turned into a fat orange cat. Performing the exam became much easier this way. Mimi was very obedient, cooperatively lying on the X-ray machine. Once the results were out, I told Granny Chu why Mimi was so listless. Granny, Mimi has indigestion. Look at his belly. It's full of undigested food. He's also a bit constipated. He's packed full of waste. Have you been feeding him too much? Granny stroked the orange cat's head and said, I only fed him 20 pounds of meat. Mimi was very polite. He finished every bit every time. I was dumbfounded. 20 pounds of meat? It seems there's a phenomenon called Granny thinks you're hungry. I advised Granny Chu to only feed him about 10 pounds from now on, and I also prescribed some digestive medicine for Mimi. After the treatment ended, Mimi suddenly jumped into my arms, leaned into my ear, and whispered. He asked me to do him a favor. Before I could ask more, Granny Sue pulled some tightly wrapped money out of a plastic bag. She handed it to me, but I refused. The monster world is different from the real world. Perhaps the pets raised by other monsters weren't easy to deal with either, so I asked her to help me set a stasis field for the shop so that every animal would automatically shrink upon entering. After setting up the field, exams and treatments became much more convenient. One night, I was awakened by a frantic knocking on the door. Dr. Jiang, please save my puppy. The girl's voice was desperate. Out of professional ethics, I immediately crawled out of bed. As soon as I opened the door, I saw the girl covered in blood. But she ignored her own injuries and gripped my hand tightly. I heard from Granny Chu that you treat animals. Doctor, save my puppy. He's been badly hurt. As she spoke, she was about to kneel. I looked behind her. It was a monster with 3 heads. Massive in size. At least 5 meters long. He looked quite a bit like a 3-headed hellhound. There were many puncture wounds on his body, and a long gash on one of his heads, deep enough to see the bone. I didn't waste any words. I told the girl to hurry and bring him into the pet shop. The hellhound shrank instantly, turning into a golden retriever. Seeing the retriever's state, the girl's tears poured out uncontrollably. After pushing the hellhound into the operating room, I began cleaning the wounds, stopping the bleeding, and suturing. The hellhound was too heavily injured. Every wound was aimed to kill him. I spent a full 2 hours finishing all the stitches. Leaving the operating room, the girl rushed over to ask for an update. Don't worry. The surgery was a success. He's just unconscious from excessive blood loss. As long as he makes it through tonight, he'll be fine. The girl let out a long sigh of relief. She took my hand and kept thanking me, seeing her own wound still bleeding. I said, I don't think you can hold out much longer either. If you trust me, I can provide some basic treatment for you. The girl was young, looking only about 17 or 18. I just didn't know how they, as monsters, could have been hurt so badly. After treating her wounds, I asked her that very question. The girl replied, Sister, I'm an NPC in the Hell instance. You can just call me Cece. Tonight, a group of players broke into Hell. Without a word, they used weapons to attack all the NPCs. Every time they killed an NPC, they cheered, saying they got another 100 points. I'm just an ordinary NPC. They surrounded and attacked me. I couldn't fight them all off. At the critical moment, Shaji rushed forward to block the fatal blow for me. He held me in his mouth, using his body to endure the artillery damage, until the big boss finally appeared. As she spoke, tears streamed down her face again. So that's how it was. It seems some players aren't kind at all. If people like that showed up in my instance, I'd just kill them off. Looking at Cece and Xiaoji moved me deeply. To distract the girl, I asked how they met. Mentioning their meeting, the girl's eyes softened. I raised Xiaoji since he was a puppy. We were in a car accident and ended up in this horror game together. I was too weak and was always bullied by players. He suffered a lot along with me. Until one day, he almost died trying to protect me. I was terrified just thinking about it. I decided to give him to the big boss. Under the boss, at least he wouldn't get hurt. But I didn't expect. Xiaoji just disappeared. When he came back, he looked like this. For my sake, he went to Frankenstein to have his body modified, turning into this monstrous form. Just then, Xiaoji, lying on the bed, opened his eyes. He spoke, Cece. To protect you. I don't mind being a monster. I will definitely become the strongest monster. Then no players will ever dare bully you again. Ugh, I want to cry. I pulled out a tissue and blew my nose. Don't worry. I will definitely heal Xiaoji, but he'll have to stay at the shop for a while. You can come to see him every day after work while he recovers. After what happened to Cece and Xiaoji regarding the player attack, I had been feeling uneasy. I felt those players would definitely return. So while I was handing out flyers, I warned NPCs in every instance. If you notice anything wrong, you must run immediately. Thanks to my warning, many NPCs escaped being harmed by players. To thank me, they all came to support my business. I could understand those with pets buying things. But why were you petless ones buying cat and dog food? The NPCs responded with smiles. To feed the stray cats and dogs. They argued playfully, while stuffing items into their arms, not stopping until they couldn't carry any more. The horror game returned to its usual peace, and business at my pet shop was booming. One day, while I was organizing goods on the shelves, I suddenly heard a hissing sound outside. At the same time, I felt the whole sky go dark. Was it raining again? I stepped out of the pet shop to investigate. The next second, a massive tongue appeared before my eyes. Crimson vines seemed to look toward me, radiating an ominous aura. I almost fainted from fright. Whose high-level pet is this? They didn't even say hello before arriving. The giant python coiled directly over my little shop. It felt like if he exerted just a little pressure, my shop would turn into rubble instantly. My heart was pounding out of my chest. But I pretended to stay calm on the surface. Are you looking to buy something? Or do you need to see a doctor? Hissing, the python spoke in human tongue. Can you heal? I nodded frantically. If you want an exam, please come in through the front door. The giant snake slithered a few more rounds, then crawled down from the roof. The moment he entered the shop, he shrank proportionally, turning into a beautiful king snake. But why was this king snake as fat as a bucket? His scales were even flaring. After entering the shop, the snake looked around curiously. He even slithered over to Xiaoji's bed to watch for a while. Xiaoji was asleep, but for some reason, I got the feeling Xiaoji was faking it. In fact, he was trembling slightly. He seemed very afraid of this chubby king snake. Why hasn't your master arrived yet? Master? I am the majestic king of 100 snakes. I don't need such a thing. I was a bit dazed after hearing that. Xiaoji whispered an explanation, Dr. Jiang. He is the Snake King from the Snake Island thriller instance. I heard the snakes there are all very vicious. Whatever you do, don't make him angry. The king snake shot him a glare. And Xiaoji quickly closed his eyes and went back to faking sleep, so he was a wild snake. What's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell? The snake coiled around me a few times before speaking. My mouth hurts. And I'm always dizzy. Especially after I stand up suddenly. My vision goes black. I heard you can cure anything here. So, King, check me out and see what's going on. He was actually a snake with an 8th grader syndrome. I followed his lead, Great Snake King. Let's start with an examination. Open wide. The Snake King obediently opened his mouth. I checked to see if there were any foreign objects. Parts of his mouth were already ulcerated and swollen. It looked like stomatitis. I used a swab to take some samples of the secretions, drew some blood, and sent them to the lab. When the results came back, not only did this Snake King have bacterial stomatitis, but his blood lipids were also very high. Logically, stomatitis should make it too painful to eat, yet he was chubby with high blood fat. It was so contradictory. Your mouth has been hurting for at least a month. How can you still eat so much? The Snake King sighed. It's because my subordinates are incompetent. I have to handle everything myself. It turned out that in the Snake Island thriller instance, at least 100 players were dropped in each time. If they survived for 10 days, they could clear the stage, but these players chose not to stay low. Instead, they started targeting the snake eggs. Supposedly, there were rumors that eating snake eggs could strengthen the body and grant superhuman power. Those players relentlessly staked out near the snake pits, hunting the mother snakes and stealing eggs. As the king of snakes, I had to patrol every day. When I caught players stealing eggs, I strangled them immediately. To intimidate these players, I endured the intense pain in my mouth and swallowed them all into my stomach. Now that the players have behaved themselves a bit, he finally found time to see a doctor. It seems being a leader isn't easy either. I couldn't help but sigh after hearing that. I used boric acid solution to disinfect the Snake King's mouth and applied ointment. I instructed him to apply it twice daily. Apply it for 10 days and you'll be cured. Since you don't have a master, stay in the shop for these 10 days. I'll apply the medicine for you. Also, you can't eat any more players for a while. Your blood lipids are too high. You need a healthy diet to lose weight. The Snake King tilted his head arrogantly. I know that naturally. Good, good. Go on then. Your bed is right next to Xiaoji's. Hearing this, Xiaoji looked up immediately, with a miserable face as if wanting to refuse but not daring to. There was nothing I could do. I was alone in the shop. I had to take care of both of them, while also running the shop. I was simply too busy, so Xiaoji would just have to be scared for a few days. Since the Snake King started his weight loss, I prepared low-fat, low-calorie diet meals for him every day, strictly controlling his calorie intake. The Snake King would hiss hungry, hungry beside me every day, but my heart was as hard as stone. To completely cure the Snake King, I ignored his constant nagging in my ear. He somehow found a cookbook somewhere and kept reading it aloud while circling me. Listening to it made my own mouth water. Since I started working in this horror game, I hadn't eaten human food in a very long time. After work that day, I heard the abomination from the next instance say that an egg pancake shop had opened in the horror game. I immediately rushed to the shop and ordered a deluxe egg pancake. That taste, it was exactly the same as what I had in the real world. It was delicious. From then on, I went to have an egg pancake every day after work. The Great Snake King followed me and also got a taste of this earthly delicacy. During this time, Mimi came to see me again. He wanted me to help find an orange cat similar to himself, though I didn't know his intention. I did as he asked. Perhaps even monsters want to have pets too. On another peaceful day, a very beautiful merman showed up at the door. I recognized him. He was Muley, the boss from Temptation of the Siren. Before Muley could even speak, tears began to fall. Doctor, I think I have a terminal illness, and I don't have long to live. I went to the human hospital, but they said I'm a merman, so they wouldn't admit me. They told me to go to a veterinarian. I thought about it. The hospital wasn't wrong. There's a big difference between a fish and a human. I gently patted Muley's back. I comforted him. I am a veterinarian. You can tell me specifically what's happening. Muley sobbed. Lately, I've been feeling restless and hot. And I feel very depressed. Even my scales have started falling out. I checked ancient books, and it says this is an incurable disease, and I'm going to die soon. I had never treated a merman before, but I figured it should be similar to treating fish. How about I give you a checkup first? Muley nodded. And turned into a very beautiful koi fish. After completing all the exams, I went silent. Everything was normal. And he was a healthy young fish. He didn't have any disease. Then why was he feeling restless and hot? Could it be too much internal heat? But I didn't know anything about Chinese medicine. I lowered my head in thought, and suddenly a possibility occurred to me. You couldn't possibly be in heat, could you? It was spring. The breeding season for animals. Even though a merman has a human upper body, at the end of the day, he's still an animal. Muley froze for a moment and asked me what in heat meant. I asked curiously. Did your elders never teach you how mermen reproduce? Upon hearing about family, Muley lowered his eyelashes. I couldn't see his expression. I have no family. They were all captured by humans. And I've never seen them again. I wanted to sew my own mouth shut. Why did I speak so quickly? I'm such a jerk. I took Muley to see the oldest group of NPCs in the horror game. They eventually confirmed that he was indeed in heat. I looked at him with a complicated expression. If you're in heat, I have no way to cure you. Maybe try doing something else to distract yourself? Muley looked dazed, but I don't know what else to do. Well, I could perform a neutering surgery on you. Back in my life at the pet hospital, I diffused many situations. A girl even gave me a banner once. It said, the bomb disposal expert. My gaze shifted downward, my voice carrying an excitement I couldn't hide. Although you're a merman, your structure should be similar to a fish. Muley was so scared he backed up 10 steps. Thank you, Dr. Jiang. I feel like my illness is already cured. Totally cured. Oh, it seems my house is on fire. I'm going back now. Goodbye, miracle doctor. With that, he fled in a panic. I covered my mouth and giggled. It seems he's still just a child. After Muley left, Granny Chu brought Mimi to the shop. Dr. Jiang. Our happy community instance is going for a team building trip. Mimi is too conspicuous. I can't take him with me. Can I board him at your shop for a while? I took Mimi's leash. Of course, Granny Chu, I hope you have a pleasant trip. Just like that, my shop gained another little companion. That day, I had just finished removing Xiaoji's stitches and prepared a fat-reducing meal for the Snake King when I heard a bang outside the shop. My main door was blown to smithereens. A group of players carrying weapons walked in arrogantly. Boss? She's the one spreading news everywhere, causing us to fail to kill even a single NPC. The guild has been broke as hell lately. Everyone is fighting to the death. Just for a single low-level item. The scar-faced man in the lead heard this, and smiled disdainfully. She's just a boss in a low-level instance. With just one of my shells, I can blast her into the afterlife right here. The players behind him cheered, boss is mighty. But the scar-faced man shook his head. This woman has kept our guild poor for so long. We can't let her off that easily. We must make her life worse than death. So she regrets crossing us. I see so many animals in her shop. How about we start with them first? Xiao Li. Go tie her up. I want her to see with her own eyes. What happens when you cross us? Xiao Li immediately took out a prop and approached me. After a few exchanges, I was at a disadvantage. With one lapse in attention, I was tied up tightly by Xiao Li's prop. I actually couldn't break free from these ropes. It's strange, with this group's strength, there's no way they'd be assigned to a beginner-level instance. It seems they used some method to trick the master god. Scarface, the leader, pulled out a chair and sat down. He crossed his legs and issued an order. Whoever kills these animals first gets the points. To curry favor, Xiaoli was the first to step forward towards Xiaoji. Xiaoji let out a low growl. My heart tightened. Xiaoji, the poor thing just had his stitches removed. If he exercises violently, they'll likely tear open again. Xiaoli smiled disdainfully. Oh, a mere beast dares to challenge me? I'll show you who's boss. He summoned a baseball bat out of thin air and swung it hard at Xiaoji's head. Xiaoji nimbly dodged and jumped to the side. Seeing this, the other players burst into laughter. Xiaoli's face turned red with shame and anger. He used a control prop to freeze Xiaoji in place. Then he took out a knife and stabbed Xiaoji's hind leg viciously. Instantly, blood began to flow. My eyes turned bloodshot with rage. Xiaoji had lost a lot of blood from his last injury. It had taken so much effort to recover some health lately, and now he's been hurt again by this person. Fortunately, Xiaoji soon broke free from the prop's restraint and jumped to a high place to hide. One person circled behind Mimi and grabbed him by the scruff of the neck. Mimi was too small. Even though he twisted his body frantically, he couldn't escape no matter what. I was driven mad with anger. I used all my strength to try and break the ropes. You cowards. If you have the guts, come at me. What kind of skill is hurting small animals? Scarface patted my face and heartlessly plunged a knife into my stomach. Then a smile appeared on his face. I realized it. As long as you don't die, and I keep stabbing you, I can keep earning points. Everyone got excited and began throwing props to catch Xiaoji, while Mimi almost met a cruel fate. Luckily, he reacted quickly and scratched the person. Enduring the pain, I looked around for the Snake King's whereabouts, hoping he would hide quickly and not be found by these people. Suddenly, I saw at the door a chubby calico snake appearing, crawling out toward the exit as fast as it could. That's right. These players don't know that the pet shop has a suppression zone, nor do they know that as long as they step outside, they will return to their original forms. I shouted, Mimi, Xiaoji, don't worry about me. Run outside. Scarface snorted coldly. Thinking of running? It's not that easy. But in the next second, he was dumbfounded. The calico snake had already rushed out of the shop. Without the suppression zone, his body instantly swelled. Returning to his original state, he became a giant forest python. He coiled around the building, his slit pupils staring coldly down at every player on the ground. Hiss. This king is so hungry. This scene would make anyone break into a cold sweat. The entire room darkened. Someone was the first to have their legs go weak from fear. With a trembling voice. This looks like the Snake King from Snake Island Horrors. Many of our teammates were eaten by him before. What nonsense are you talking? The Snake King disappeared a long time ago. How could he appear in this beginner instance? I think you've lost your mind. Even though he said that, I could see that Scarface was clearly unable to stand steady. His hands were trembling. Then he stabbed me viciously again. Is this your doing? I couldn't help but cry out in pain. Mimi bared his fur and stood with Xiaoji to protect me. I tried to keep my voice steady. Xiaoji, Mimi. Get out of here quickly. You can return to your original forms once you're out, but they remained unmoved, still blocking the way in front of me. The players were terrified by the Snake King and didn't dare to make their next move. Scarface's eyes darted around and he said, don't panic. As long as we don't step out of the shop, the Snake King can't do anything to us. The other players realized this. Right. When the time comes, we'll just kill the boss of this instance and we can clear it. They wanted to hide in the shop, but the Snake King didn't give them the chance. He coiled around the exterior, constricting tighter and tighter. The roof began to crack, showering down stones and debris. The glass in the window shattered with a bang. Shards flying everywhere. I felt a pang of heartache. The shop I had built with such effort was about to become a pile of ruins. Within seconds, the entire shop crumbled to pieces. Amidst the rolling thick dust, a Siberian tiger loomed into view. Behind him was an even larger three-headed hellhound. Each head was drooling, staring at the players on the ground with fierce greed. Before the players could react, Xiaoji lunged forward and bit Scarface, who was at the back. Scarface reacted too. He picked up his Gatling gun and started blasting Xiaoji in the face, but this amount of damage was like a tickle to him. His other head snatched Scarface away, chewed him up, and swallowed him, watching the strongest leader of the team not even last a second against the three-headed hellhound. The players' morale collapsed. Isn't this a beginner instance? How can there be a horror like the Snake King? And an X-rank three-headed hellhound? That Siberian tiger is no pushover either. I've seen him in Happy Community. He mauled over a dozen players in one night. We were lied to. The strength of this instance's big boss definitely exceeds 3S rank. She hasn't even made a move yet and we're already being killed by her subordinates. If the big boss does make a move, will we have any chance of surviving? The players gave up resisting and began to scatter and flee, but the Snake King had already used his body to isolate a battleground, acting like a wall 5 meters high that was completely airtight. Shelly tried to use a prop to fly away, but he had barely left the ground by a meter when Mimi locked onto him. I forgot to mention, although Mimi is a Siberian tiger, he's still a feline at heart. Like a house cat, he loves flying toys. Mimi's eyes flashed with golden light. He crouched and leaped, successfully catching Shaoli and dragging him down. A Siberian tiger's paw strike weighs at least 100 pounds. I thought I heard the sound of bones shattering. Shaoli lay on the ground, his chest caved in, blood constantly gushing from his mouth. Clearly, he was taking in more breath than he was letting out. 2 people in the team died in a row, both killed effortlessly. Some players had already given up resisting. They knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Xiaoji and Mimi. I'm not with them. I was just following orders. The culprit, Scarface, is already dead. Let me go. I didn't bully you. I beg you, let me go home. I was wrong, I'll never enter this instance again. But the player kneeling the fastest was the very one who suggested torturing Mimi and the others for points. Mimi wasn't stupid. He swiped a paw directly, crushing that person into a pulp. Seeing that begging was useless, the player slumped to the ground in terror. But some players decided to make a final stand. Brothers, kill them. We still have one chance to live. As long as we get the points, even if we have only one breath left, the Master God Space can save us. The Snake King glanced at this man and instantly bit down on him. Poisonous fangs pierced the player's stomach, continuously injecting venom until the player turned purple all over. The Snake King threw back his head to swallow the man. I quickly climbed onto the Snake King's head and patted him vigorously. You have high blood lipids. No matter how hungry you are, you can't eat humans. And who knows how many bacteria this person has? Do you want your stomatitis to ever heal? Spit him out quickly. Spit him out. The Snake King let out a retch and spat out the slimy player. As for the remaining players, they were dealt with cleanly by Mimi and Xiaoji. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes before it ended. To call it a battle was more like a one-sided slaughter. I sat on top of the Snake King's head, looking down at the field of ruins. I sighed deeply. Sigh, it looks like the instance will have to be closed for a while. In this horror game, where am I going to find workers to build a house? It's so stressful. Amidst the ruins, Mimi found the little orange cat I had rescued before. I almost forgot about it. Earlier, Mimi had asked me to help him find an orange cat. This was a cat I encountered in another instance. It was just skin and bones from hunger. I happened to see it and brought it back. When the players burst in, the little orange cat had slipped out through the back door. Mimi gently picked up the orange cat in his mouth and placed it in my palm. I asked in confusion, why did you want me to find this little orange cat? Mimi whispered a few words in my ear, then turned and left without looking back. The next day, Granny Chu returned from the team building. My instance was still a pile of ruins, so she wouldn't worry. I decided to go to the Happy Community instance to find her. Granny Chu happily welcomed me into her home. The house was decorated very warmly, with photos of Mimi and Granny Chu posted everywhere. I thought to myself, so this is what the cat lady's home looks like. I took the soundly sleeping orange cat from my arms and handed it to Granny Chu, but I was too guilty to look at her. I didn't dare tell Granny Chu that Mimi had already left. Mimi hadn't told me exactly where he was going. Granny Chu took the little orange cat and put it into a clean, warm nest. Thank you for bringing the kitten. But where is my Mimi? I froze. I thought Granny Chu would only notice after a few days, but I didn't expect her to see through it immediately, even though I had asked the merman for help to make the orange cat look like a mini version of Mimi. Granny Chu still identified it at a glance. I stammered, unable to speak. This is what Mimi specifically asked of me before he left. Mimi said his time was coming to an end. He didn't have many days left to live. He didn't want Granny Chu to know and be sad. I'm sorry, Granny. I can't say. I thought I would be kicked out. But Granny Chu instead took my hand. I don't blame you. Come on, let's go find Mimi together. I was shocked. Granny, you know where Mimi is? Of course. He is my family. How could I not know? We walked for a long time and found Mimi in the deepest part of the forest. He was curled up under a large tree and hadn't noticed us. Granny Chu called out softly. He instantly opened his eyes and turned his head, and then he shed tears. This was the first time I had ever seen an animal cry. In veterinary medicine, secreting tears is only a physiological reaction. Felines don't cry due to emotions the way humans do. In the past, I didn't believe animals could express emotion through tears either. But the scene before me left me with no choice but to believe. Mimi threw himself into Granny Chu's arms, and she stroked his head over and over again, comforting him, don't be afraid. This time, you're just falling asleep forever. It won't hurt as much as last time. It turns out that before Mimi died, he had been brutally killed by poachers. After coming to the horror game, he attacked every human equally and hid in the forest every day, until Granny Chu's appearance allowed him to let down his guard and live in peace with humans. I lowered my eyes, feeling somewhat sad. I asked Granny Chu, can horrors die a second time? Of course. The life of every horror is limited. Otherwise, the instances couldn't be updated. These are the rules set from above. Then when a horror dies, will they disappear forever? Granny Chu shook her head. As long as we still remember, they will never disappear. Yes, as long as we still remember Mimi, he will live forever in our memories. Granny Chu held Mimi for a long, long time. Mimi leaned against Granny Chu's chest, comfortably narrowing his eyes and letting out a purring sound. Finally, Mimi breathed his last in Granny Chu's arms and faded away. It wasn't until dawn that Granny Chu stood up, patted the dust off her clothes, and said, "Let's go. Let's go home." Granny held a simple farewell ceremony for Mimi. Surprisingly, many horrors actually came. Everyone came as if by prior agreement to mourn the Siberian tiger. But the liveliness was only temporary. When the crowd dispersed, Granny Chu was alone. Returning to her home filled with Mimi's traces, she could no longer control her emotions and tears fell. The little orange cat suddenly walked out and rubbed against Granny Chu's palm. He curled up in Granny Chu's arms, trying to comfort her. Granny Chu sniffed, using the little cat to wipe away her tears. "Mimi, thank you for leaving Xiaomi to accompany this old lady. It took 3 months, but my pet shop was rebuilt." At that time, the pet paradise instance I was responsible for had its difficulty raised to ultimate. I was a bit puzzled. My strength clearly hadn't increased. But since no one gave an explanation, I just continued dealing with players while running my pet shop. I don't know why, but more and more horrors in the horror game were keeping pets. And their pets were quite bizarre. Those that fly in the sky, crawl on the ground, and swim in the water. We had them all. There was even a horror who kept a rock as a pet. When he brought the rock to my shop to buy supplies, a player mocked him for being crazy, for keeping a useless rock. As a result, the horror picked up the rock, shouting, "Go get him, Xiao Chong." In the next second, it cracked the player's head open. That little player never dared to mock him again. I didn't dare say much either. I was afraid he might hit my head too. Business in the shop was too good, and I really couldn't handle it alone. So I asked the little merman, Muley, to come help. On Muley's first day of helping, he almost killed the spirit grass with seawater. Between laughter and tears, I held his water-beaded hands, teaching him step by step the ratio of fresh water to spirit grass needed. See? Spirit grass thrives on this water. He was born with a gentle sea spirit aura. He could soothe aquatic pets, and also keep the shop's miscellaneous affairs organized. He shared more than half of the pressure. I still stuck to my profession as a veterinarian, spending all day around special pets like ancient rabbits, spirit cats, and parrots. As time went on, the two of us gradually developed a rapport. I was in charge of diagnosis and treatment while he took care of aquatic pets and managed the logistics. In the blink of an eye, 5 years passed. The horrors of various instances, because of their pets, achieved unprecedented unity. Players no longer dared to cause trouble randomly. The pet shop had long since become a recognized sanctuary in the horror game. Muley and I still kept this little shop. Xiaoji's old injuries were completely cured. Back then, to protect his master, he was covered in scars. The three-headed hellhound, forced into constant slaughter, no longer had to take hits for his owner and simply stayed safely by her side. The Snake King, on the other hand, had completely broken free from the shackles of his destiny as the king of 100 snakes. He never returned to the ceaselessly fighting Snake Island instance. Once his illness was cured, he set aside his throne and the fighting and treated the pet shop as his true home. He still couldn't change his tsundere nature. Every day he'd wait on time for me to feed him low-fat dried fish. After eating, he'd coil up at the entrance to sunbathe. If any low-level monsters tried to cause trouble, he only needed to let out a faint breath of pressure to turn them away. He became the guardian beast of this little shop. Muley and I stood at the shop's entrance, looking at the lazy Snake King. He subconsciously leaned closer to my side. At such a close distance, we could feel each other's warmth. In every day and night to come, we would protect this little shop and the creatures around us. In this horror game filled with darkness, we will let this warmth continue forever. In the evening, I lay on the rocking chair, watching the blood-red sunset. I didn't expect that life in a horror game could actually be quite nice.